We're going to try this now with sound. Now that I've remembered to unmute my mic. So, there's sound. Hello. Hi. We're going to try and speed this up. The last one, with no sound, 30 minutes. So, this video is going to be covering the generic universal perks in the game, which are blue. So, when you equip perks in your grid, there are two colors. Blue ones are universal and can be used regardless of the class you're on. Green ones are specific to the class that you are playing. If you are playing the gunner, you can only use their green perks. So, we're going to be covering the blue ones. So, the first ones to cover are the ones that I do not recommend using, that are terrible. These are the weapon-specific ones you unlock with each class. So each class is allowed to use two weapons. Gunner uses, for example, rifles and close quarters. And they have a weird 4-block grid one. And then they have a expertise and mastery one, which are each 2 blocks. And they're designed to buff that particular weapon when they're equipped. I highly do not recommend that you run these. Now, I see a lot of people run Kramer super rifle builds on Gunner, which are based around half of their grid is about buffing up Overclock, and the other half of the grid is based around buffing up the Kramer assault rifle with all the rifle add-ons. So these rifle add-ons, which are 2 blocks, cannot be equipped unless they are attached to one of these. In my opinion, if they wanted to make them a little bit more viable, you should be able to use these. These are just too big and bulky to realistically fit into a grid, because there are a lot better options. Particularly generic options. They're not very good. Now, you can run a build, like a meme build, if you're running a primary weapons only challenge card. Like, you can run a gunner build that has nothing but rifle add-ons. You can do gunner rifle training with gunner rifle expertise, gunner rifle mastery. You can run recon rifle expertise, recon rifle mastery, dock rifle expertise, dock rifle mastery, demolisher rifle expertise, demolisher rifle mastery, and you can run dock rifle training and demo rifle training and recon rifle training and have nothing but rifle spam. It's not going to make the gun any better. It's really not. The guns have attachments that make them better. You can run all of the extra magazine capacity upgrades you want. You cannot create an L33 Pike with more than 1 bullet in it. You can't do it. Don't try. You can buff it up into oblivion, but it's still only going to have 1 bullet in it. You better make it count. Main reason I don't like running those. Alright, so all these I'm going to discount with the singular exception of Demo. Demo has Sidearm Expertise, which makes it that your sidearm's damage is increased by 20%. The other bonus really doesn't matter, where it's automatically reloaded if you reload another weapon. And they have Sidearm Mastery, which is attached to that, where it increases the rate of fire by 25%, and it's an almost instant switch. The main reason I do recommend this is there are 2 challenge cards. I Made a Bad Call, which disables everything but your sidearm, and Tools of the Trade, which disables your weapons except for your sidearm. Both of these are good cards to run, but they are virtually unplayable without that specific build around Sidearm Expertise. And to be fair, it's not bad if you run weapons that run out of ammo a lot. Like, if you're running the Pike double-barrel shotgun meme build of everything is like a 1-shot or a 2-shot on a Recon, Sidearm Expertise build is not particularly bad. So that's the one I'll give a pass to. Now, the next set of modifiers I want to talk about are the Statistical Buff ones. These are almost exclusively in the miscellaneous modifier, although the Gunner has rapid deployment, as well as the Phalanx gets batteries included, and the Recon gets long haul. So those 3 classes do get a extra miscellaneous modifier. What these do are, these are statistical changes that stack onto your specific abilities. They increase the radius of an ability, they recharge an ability's cooldown faster, increase the damage of the ability, or increase a duration of the ability. These have to be directly stacked onto the specific ability you want it to be attached to. They are relatively good. For a quick rundown, Overclock is able to increase its duration and decrease its cooldown. I've seen some super Overclock builds. I think it's fine without them. I mostly use it as a boss killer. I really think it just needs the 2 generic gunner ones. If you do want to run a super Overclock build, which again, like I've said before, I think that there needs to be a prestige option when you hit max rank, where you can prestige a certain amount of times and get a bonus reward. I would recommend, like, you can prestige 4 times, so you can be a max rank of 5, like gunner rank 5, where, like, the first 2 prestiges open up an extra gunner slot, so you could have 2 gunners, and then 3 gunner slots, so you can do different builds like that, and maybe the other 2 prestiges you get, so each class has an ability replacer that's tied to one ability. For gunner, for example, it is tied to your grenade. I would like if the other 2 ability replacers unlocked for the other ability that you use, in this case, Overclock, and they unlock when you prestige that class. So let's say, you don't like Overclock. Let's say you slow your rate, you have your rate of fire instead, but your weapons now have, say, no recoil and inflict 30% more damage. Something like that. So it could change how it works. Or you could make it so that Overclock now makes your guns no longer run out of ammo for the duration of the ability, but then deal 25% less damage. Just, I wanted to throw that out there. But, back to my original topic at hand, these are mostly going to be stacked on, like if you want to have a big radius grenade, you stack on all the reach add-ons, etc. It really depends. For the frag grenade, I recommend that you run recharge. You can get your grenade out faster if you want to buff it. You don't need radius or damage, but they are nice, although I would prioritize radius over damage. For Overclock, you can run cooldown and duration. I personally would run cooldown over duration. I'd rather have the ability back faster than having it longer. It's usually enough to kill a heavy Xeno, or at least pretty heavily weaken it. For the Demolisher, Blast Wave can apply everything except duration. I would not recommend damage, because it deals no damage. I would recommend radius and recharge. Radius mostly to help with assault and battery. Recharge is just nice, but you don't have to run it if you don't have the room. Micro rockets can benefit from everything except duration. I would recommend damage or cooldown. You don't need the radius. Decent enough. It really depends on what you want. You don't need damage. There is a passive, loud and clear, that stacks on it very well. Cooldown could work on it. I personally don't think you need to add too much on the micro rockets. You should focus a little bit more on Blast Wave. For Technician, the turret can benefit from damage and cooldown. Cooldown doesn't matter because you can pick up the turret and move it. There's also the passive for it where... What's the passive for it? Am I running the passive for it? Am I not running the passive for it? Oh, I don't have it unlocked. That's right. You can run the passive for it where it reduces the recharge. I forgot, like, wait, what? I'm not running the passive for it? The extra damage is kind of glitched. It doesn't always work on it. Like, it works if you run the regular turret. It doesn't work if you run the flame turret. I don't give a shit. I'm still running it. Just for the memes. That being said, it is a pretty decent ability to focus around. You don't need to run cooldown. You just pick it up. Damage you can run if you want. For the charge coils, it can affect everything. I see like massive charge coil builds that they stack like tons of cooldown reduction and duration. You don't want to increase its damage or its radius. The radius is pretty decent, and the damage is minuscule. Cooldown is alright, but there are 3 of them out, so I really wouldn't worry too much about that. I would more buff duration, so it lasts a little bit longer. You get more value out of it, especially where you have 3. For the Doc's Trauma Station benefits from cooldown, which you're not going to use because you're just going to pick it up like the turret, and radius, which it does have two abilities that are they're class specific that increase radius. You're better off running them. These two give more of a bonus than running the increased radius by 18%. This is 20%, and then this is another 20%, plus it has the debuff on it. Combat stims benefit from cooldown, duration, and I think that's it, just cooldown duration. Duration, I would not run, because there is a one called Overdose. And if you do run Overdose, you should run cooldown. If you don't really use combat stims, like I use this, because it is kind of effective for killing bosses. If you don't run anything for combat stims, which I do see a decent amount of Doc builds that are based around just like generically buffing up like movement speed and stuff like that, turn them into a flanker, then don't even bother. You don't need to run anything on it. For the Recon has two interesting paths. So the support drone can benefit from duration, radius, and cooldown. I would not recommend radius. It actually has a decent radius on it. I would not recommend cooldown. Your cooldown add-ons are going to be better on pups than the drone. Duration is alright. If you have the... It is a decent enough ability where it gives you, you know, more life per kill and more ammo. It's nice for like refilling on the go for your ammo and stuff like that. It's not necessary though. Pups can affect the recharge and the duration, and I highly recommend recharge. By default, they last for 20 seconds. If you can get your recharge speed to 8% recharge speed, like I did on my previous build before I added Distracting Howl, then you have a 13-second cooldown. The faster you can get these bad boys out, the faster they are effective. So I highly recommend the recharge speed on these over the duration. Duration's pretty good. Last is Phalanx. Phalanx gets absolutely no benefit out of shield up. You cannot do anything to shield up with those abilities. Shock Pulse can get benefit out of everything. It can get bonuses out of duration out of the default version of Shock Pulse. I don't recommend it. It can get bonus effects out of damage. I also don't recommend that. It doesn't do a lot of damage, kind of like Blast Wave. Most is cooldown and radius. I personally would lean towards radius because it is a relatively short range ability. Certain enemies I kind of want to hit a little bit longer way. I don't want them to be as close to me when I activate it. So that's the main reason. But cooldown is also good for it. So that covers the generic ones. Now we're going to cover each class's core perks that they can run. Instead, last time I did this individually. Best to worst, or worst to best. For this one, I'm going to do it as specifics. So we're going to have it as a don't run, a maybe run, and a definite run. So, level, by the way, just as a spoiler alert, the best ones you want to run are Demo and Doc. Demo and Doc are the two best. Recon and Gunner are in the maybe category, alright? So Phalanx has its two, which are Resilience and Keep 'em Pinned. They're both mediocre. Keep 'em Pinned makes it so that enemies you shoot deal 10% less damage to anyone for 4 seconds. But that effect does not stack. The reason why it's not very good is because the Recon Pup's ability reduces damage to all the revealed zeros. Not the ones that you just the ones that you shoot, by the way. For 20 seconds on a 13-second cooldown, potentially. That is so much better than this. This is not worth the slot. Not to mention the fact that your weapons are relatively close to medium range, so you really are not getting an effect out of it. The other one is Resilience. Now, on the Phalanx, this is a must run for one reason. It increases your shield movement speed. Your shield makes you slow, so this makes you go faster. So on the Phalanx, I would run it. On the other classes, I would not run it. They do not get any benefit out of the shield movement speed. The only benefit they get is the 10% ADS movement speed. That's really only if you're running like a super ADS build. I don't think it's really necessary to run that. It's nice, sure, but it's not needed. The 20% stun resistance means you are 20% less likely to be stunned. Most of the abilities that stun you in this game are actually grapples, or they're stumbles. They're either grapples or stumbles. The only thing that this realistically affects is like a crusher headbutt. Not worth it. Next up, we are going to be covering the Technician, because the Technician is another one that has relative shit. The only one that he has here is Strategic Tactics. This, again, benefits him. It gives you 20% turret health. Nice for turret. Not nice, really, for everybody else, because it does affect their consumables. And outside the deployable sentry turret, the 300 ammo sentry turret, they actually have a decent amount of health. Particularly the electric and the fire turret have a decent amount of health. It doesn't really help that. Also, if you're not running turrets, there's value out. The 8% stun recovery, you get out of stuns, including grapples, faster. It's not worth it. You can stack a bunch of these stun recoveries onto a demo, because he has class exclusives. If you want to have, like, insta-stun recovery, not great. The debuff duration is the main benefit. You're going to run it on other classes, but most of the other classes' debuff abilities last for a set time, like 4 or 5 seconds, so you're adding like an extra second or two to them. Most of the time, you're going to be able to kill it within that time frame, except for maybe like heavy Xenos on higher difficulties. This is not really worth it. Now, the next one I want to cover is going to be Gunner. Unfortunately, Gunner does have a bad one. It's weapon specific. Now, this is the first maybe. Short controlled burst. This depends entirely on the weapon. So first off, Phalanx and Technician are not going to benefit from this too much. This is mostly going to benefit for rifle users. What it increases stability for the first 4 rounds of each burst. This effectiveness is half for non-automatic weapons. Basically, this gun, if it does not fire automatic rapid fire, you don't get any value. 4 shots you fire from that gun, it produced recoil. Okay? Now we have to come to weapons and explain what that means. So for the rifles, you're going to benefit from the halberd, the pulse rifle, the heavy assault, and the Kramer that I don't have unlocked. For close quarters, you're going to benefit from both SMGs and the auto shotgun that I don't have unlocked. For handguns, you're going to benefit from the auto pistol. And for the heavy, technically you will benefit on the smart gun and the minigun. However, in practice, you're not going to, because they fire more than 4 bullets at a time effectively. So the Technician, for example, suffers because he's only going to get value if he's running the auto pistol or an SMG. Same thing with Recon. It's mostly, in my opinion, for rifles. If you need to fill 2 slots and you don't have anything else you really want to run, this is alright depending on the weapon. I do personally prefer Surgeon Hands off of the dock to this. It's alright if you're using, like if you are making the super rifle build for, say, a Kramer assault rifle, this is something I would recommend adding to make it that much better, but it's not really mandatory. It locks a lot of your weapons out. Burst weapons don't get value out of it because they're not automatic fire. Single shot weapons don't get value because they're not automatic fire. It's just not that great unless you have nothing else to run for 2-slot filler. So, we're going to cover the Recon next. The Recon gets access to a good one and a bad one. So the bad one is hit and run tactics, which is 10% movement speed. This is better on either a gunner or a doc with their class-specific movement speed buffs if you want a flanker built. So like a very fast run-around doc with combat stems, readiness, things like that. They move around a lot faster. You can run it on that. Same thing with a gunner if you're running like a mobility-based build. You can run on that for the movement speed. It's not great. You get 20% stun recovery. Again, that can work if you want the meme stun recovery build for demo where he gets up like insta-fast. The main reason you would run it is for 20% grapple damage resistance. So the enemies that do a grapple are the Prowler, Drone, Warrior, Praetorian, where they have a grab. Now, the Drone does not have a minigame on his, whereas the Prowler, Warrior, and Praetorian do. However, the main thing what does is it gives you a little bit of damage reduction on the grapple attack. The issue is that on the higher difficulties, you instead can get insta-killed if you fail at low enough health. So, the grapple resistance doesn't help with that insta-kill. That's where it becomes dangerous. That's why this sucks. Now, the first of the two mandatory universals is also from Recon, in my opinion, and that is downrange. Downrange increases your far distance damage by 20%. They put the note that in this case it means that your guns deal more damage at max range than close range. This is critical on any weapon because it just gives you a straight damage boost at your maximum range. On weapons that are close quarter weapons that have limited damage ranges, like the flamethrower and the shotgun, where they can only hit up to a certain range. Past a certain range, they just don't deal damage. It is very important because at their maximum ranges, they can actually get more damage, which is nice. For weapons that don't have maximum damage ranges, it's nice for just giving it a little bit of a solid boost. Particularly the pike. The pike actually does insane damage at maximum range, but you're not going to be killing a lot of stuff at maximum range. It is, to me, essential because it is a straight damage boost. As enemies approach you, you are doing more damage to them until they get up close. So, next up, we are going to be covering the Demolisher. The Demolisher has the second must-run ability. We already covered Sidearm Expertise, and that is Down and Out. I do need to mention how Down and Out works. You deal 20% more damage to enemies that are stunned or knocked. Now, let's explain what stuns and knocks. The gunner can knock with Disorienting Blast on the grenade. Both demo abilities have the ability to stun or knock back. Blast Wave is a stun knockback, and the Micro Rockets can have a knock on it with a modifier. Technician can get a weird knock effect off of the turret, which I'll explain in a minute. Doc gets none. Recon gets none. Phalanx can get a stun off of Shield Bash if you melee with the shield. It has a stun on its regular static field, and it can get a knockback off of the Concussion Pulse modifier. So 3 of the classes have the ability to directly stun or knock. Now, Technician is an interesting case because Technician has creative pain point solutions, which gives you bonus damage on slow, and Resonating Impact, which gives you bonus damage on stumble. Then it gets Deep Leverage, where targets that are stumbled have a chance to be knocked down. So the Technician can technically benefit from stumble, knockdown, knockback, slow, and stun. It's great. It can benefit from just maximum damage on everything. In addition, targets that are stumbled have a bonus chance to be knocked down or back, as do targets that are slowed. And both Doc and Recon have the ability off of Suppression Station and Pups to create a wider slow field. So they can help benefit that as well. It is a must-have, in my opinion, to run Down and Out just for that bonus damage, because you never know what you're going to play with, just extra free damage. The Doc gets 2. Now, both of them are maybes, and I wanted to cover them for last. So I mentioned the 2-star one, which is Surgeon's Hands. If you only have 2 blocks to work, I would run this over Short Controlled Burst. What it does is it makes it so you can no longer be stumbled when you're interacting with objects, revives, and medkits. Now, the medkit one doesn't really matter. It basically just means your medkit can't be canceled unless you get grabbed. So, anything with a grab attack, Drone, Warrior, Praetorian, Prowler, can still get you. But other stuns won't. you know, spitters, when they hit you with the goo, you don't get the stumble off of that. If you're interacting with something, if like a regular Xeno, if they walk up and just smack you, normally it stumbles you back. You don't have that. The stumbling with the interaction with objects is really only if you're speed running. Like if you're like just trying to like speed run objectives because you're running a timer card. It's not good if you're running a card that's specifically like, you know, like, oh, I need to end the level, I'm gonna die, because those types of situations you have to kill all the enemies to spawn the exit. So it doesn't help. The big reason you run it is for revives. On standard and casual difficulty, the revive timer is like 3 minutes and longer. In intense, it's 30 seconds. And insane are like 10 seconds. So Surgeon's Hand becomes mandatory to getting people up faster in that. Because on like Extreme and Insane, you getting stumbled during a revive is going to kill that. Also, this now directly ties to Bedside Manner. Now, the doc is better on this, but anybody can benefit. Basically, you pick up downed allies twice as fast, so you go from 4 to 5 seconds to 2.5 seconds. And it increases your entire team's bleed-out time by 25%. This is massively important on higher difficulties for every extra second you can get. Although doc in particular, if you're going to run it, you have to run rapid recovery because it gives you extra health and extra bleed-out timer. It is pretty good for that. They're both maybes. They're both decent on the dock, but they're not, like, really requirements, in my opinion. In my opinion, the only two mandatory ones to run are down and out and down range. But I hope that gave you a better understanding. I apologize for the last video not having sound. So this is the re-recording for you. And about 4 minutes shorter.